We often imagine enlightenment, these big moments of insight, as something you earn after years of struggle, or maybe a long, arduous journey.
Right, like climbing a mountain.
Exactly. But what if it could just happen unexpectedly, maybe even right in the middle of, well, just another day?
That's kind of what we're digging into today, isn't it?
It is. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're exploring a really fascinating story that maybe challenges those ideas.
Yeah, we've got some source texts here, excerpts from a Buddhist narrative about a figure named Dārucīriyatthera. By Dārucīriya is how he's often known.
Right, Bahia. Let's stick with Bahia, maybe easier.
Okay. And these texts give us a pretty detailed look at his path to enlightenment. And it takes some surprising twists and turns.
So our mission really is to unpack this story. What's the journey? What's the enlightenment experience like for him? And importantly, what can we maybe learn from it?
What does it tell us about waking up, about how we see things, how we see ourselves? It's quite a unique tale.
Okay, so let's jump in. It starts pretty dramatically, doesn't it? A shipwreck.
It does. Imagine a large group of people out at sea and disaster strikes. The texts are quite graphic, actually. Many people drown or are eaten by fish and turbals.
Grim beginning. But one person survives.
Yes. One man clings onto a plank, just a piece of wreckage, and eventually gets washed ashore. Lands near a port called Sapurika.
And he arrives with absolutely nothing. I mean, talk about starting over.
Completely destitute.
Wow.
The texts make a point of saying he has no clothes at all.
Wow. So what does he do?
Well, he shows some resourcefulness. He finds some bark to wrap around himself for cover, and he picks up a bowl, apparently from a temple nearby, to go seek alms. The traditional way monks would get food.
Okay, so he's got basic cover, a way to get food, but then things get interesting because of how he looks.
Right. People see him. This guy dressed only in bark, carrying an alms bowl. And they immediately, they jump to a conclusion.
They think he must be someone special, spiritually speaking.
Exactly. They assume he's an arahant. Which, just to clarify for listeners, is a fully enlightened being in Buddhism. Someone who's totally liberated from suffering.
So they see this rough appearance and think, wow, this guy must be incredibly holy.
Pretty much. And because they think he's so advanced, they offer him proper clothes. Decent garments.
But he says no.
He refuses. And his reason is quite telling. He's afraid that if he accepts the clothes, people won't respect him as much anymore.
So he thinks the bark look is key to the reverence he's getting.
Yes, and that this reverence leads to more offerings, more support. So he actually chooses to keep wearing the bark to maintain this perception.
It shows how easily appearances can mislead, doesn't it? Both the observers and, it seems, the person being observed.
Absolutely. It's a crucial dynamic here. Because he's sort of benefiting from this mistaken identity. And the text suggests this starts to affect him internally. Well, as he carries on like this, being treated with such high regard, like he's already enlightened, he starts to wonder, maybe he is an arahant. Or, at least really close to becoming one.
Oh, interesting. He starts to buy into the image himself.
Exactly. A kind of self-deception starts creeping in. And that's a really critical moment in his story.
So this man, Bahia, he's potentially heading down a bit of a mistaken path here, thinking he's something he's not. And that's when someone else steps in. A diva.
That's right, a diva.
Yeah.
So in Buddhist tradition, that's a divine being, lives in a heavenly realm. And this particular diva, it turns out, has a history with Bahia.
Oh, what kind of history?
They were actually fellow monks, practicing together in a previous lifetime. And it's this connection that makes the diva concerned about Bahia's current situation.
So the text actually gives us a flashback.
It does. It tells us about that past life. There were 7 monks, including the man who became Bahia and the one who became this diva. They felt the teachings of the Buddha of that era, Buddhakassapa, were declining. So they retreated to the mountains to practice really intensely.
Okay, a dedicated group.
Very. And one of them, not Bahia or the Deva, actually attained arahantship very quickly. And remarkably, he used his psychic powers to miraculously bring things like toothpicks and even alms food from far away to help the others.
Wow. Did they accept his help?
No, interestingly. The other monks, including Bahia, politely declined. They wanted to achieve enlightenment through their own efforts without relying on his miraculous provisions.
Speaks to a strong sense of self-reliance. Maybe a touch of spiritual pride even.
Perhaps. You could see it that way. In the end, in that lifetime, only that one monk reached the ultimate goal. He eventually passed away. Another one reached the stage of non-returner, an Anagami, and was reborn in a high Brahma world. That's our Deva.
And the other 5, including Bahia.
They didn't attain those higher states in that life, despite their efforts. They died and were reborn in various human and celestial realms, eventually ending up in the time of our current Buddha, Gautama Buddha, or Sakyamuni.
Got it. So this diva remembering their shared past and seeing Bahia now in Suparaka.
Exactly. Seeing Bahia wrapped in bark, thinking he might already be an arahant, the diva recognizes the danger. This self-misunderstanding is actually blocking Bahia's real progress.
So the diva decides to intervene directly.
Yes. He appears to Bahia.
Yeah.
And he delivers some pretty blunt news.
Which is?
He tells Bahia straight up, you are not an arahant. You haven't even attained the path leading to arahantship.
Oof. That must have been a shock, shattering that image he'd started to believe in.
Completely. Bahia is taken aback. And his first thought is, well, if I'm not an arahant, are there any true arahants out there right now? His whole frame of reference just crumbled.
Understandable reaction. Does he ask the diva?
He does. He asks, is there anyone in the world now who's an arahant or on the path? And the diva's answer really changes everything for Bahia.
What does the diva say?
He tells him, yes, there is. The fully enlightened one, the Buddha Shakyamuni, is currently alive and residing in a city called Savatthi. And he's teaching the Dhamma, the path to liberation, the way to actually become an arahant.
Wow. So suddenly there's a real path forward, a real teacher. How does Bahia react to that news?
With incredible urgency. He's filled with this intense desire, this need to get to the Buddha immediately. The texts say he travels the entire distance from Saparka to Savatthi, which was a very long way, in just a single night.
A single night? That's
Yeah.
extraordinary. How?
Well, the implication is that his urgency was so great, perhaps aided by the diva's power, or maybe even the Buddha's influence reaching out.
Yeah.
It highlights how powerful that motivation was.
So he arrives in Savatthi. What happens then?
He gets there just as the Buddha's doing his morning alms round, walking through the streets, receiving food offerings. Bahia sees him. He's just overcome, overwhelmed with emotion, seeing the enlightened one. He immediately prostrates himself right there in the street at the Buddha's feet.
And asks for teaching.
Yes, he pleads. He begs the Buddha to teach him the Dhamma, something for his long-lasting welfare and happiness, as the text puts it. A really heartfelt plea.
What does the Buddha do? Does he teach him right away?
Actually, no. The Buddha's first response is perhaps a bit surprising. He says essentially, this isn't the right time, Bahia. I'm on my alms round.
He refuses. But Bahia's come all this way with such urgency.
Exactly. And Bahia doesn't give up. He pleads again. He stresses the uncertainty of life. I don't know the danger to the Blessed One's life, nor the danger to my own life. He was basically saying, we might not get another chance. Please teach me now.
Intense. What does the Buddha say then?
He refuses a second time. Same reason it's not the time.
Why refuse twice? What's going on there?
The commentary suggests the Buddha could see Bahia was still in a very heightened emotional state, extremely agitated, overwhelmed. And maybe he knew Bahia needed a moment to settle down just slightly, to be truly receptive, to really hear the teaching properly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So after refusing twice...
After refusing twice, the Buddha, still standing there in the street, finally gives Bahia a teaching, and it's incredibly concise, profound, but very short.
What does he say?
He says, then the Bahia, you should train yourself thus. In the seen, there will be just the seen. In the heard, there will be just the heard. In the sensed, there will be just the sensed. In the cognized, there will be just the cognized.
Just that in the scene. Just the scene. What does that mean exactly? It sounds so simple.
It sounds simple, but it's incredibly deep. It's pointing directly at the raw experience before we layer on all our interpretations, judgments, likes, dislikes, stories. It's about seeing things as they are, hearing sounds as they are, feeling sensations as they are, knowing thoughts as they are, without adding the baggage of self, of desire, of aversion.
So cutting through all the mental chatter and just being present with what is.
Precisely. It's a radical instruction in bare attention, non-reactivity. And for Bahia, in that moment, hearing that, it clicked instantly.
Right.
The text says, right then and there, upon hearing just those words, Bahia attained arahantship, full enlightenment.
Immediately. Just from that sentence. That's astonishing.
It is. And it says he also gained the analytical knowledges, the Bhayasamvida, which means a really deep, thorough understanding of the teachings and reality itself. It wasn't just an emotional thing. It was a profound cognitive and experiential shift.
Wow. So instantly enlightened. What does he do next?
His immediate reaction is to ask the Buddha for ordination, to formally become a monk in his order.
And the Buddha agrees.
Well, the Buddha asks him the standard question, have you got your robes and bowl, the essential kit for a monk?
And Bahia, having just arrived with nothing, replies,
"No, venerable sir, I don't."
So what does the Buddha say? Does he magic sum up for him?
No, he tells Bahia, "Go and find a bowl and robes." And then the Buddha continues on his way.
Why send him off like that, especially after such a profound moment?
The texts offer a couple of insights. One connects back to that past life. Remember how Bahia and the others insisted on getting things through their own effort? That trait might still have been strong.
So maybe Bahia needed to fulfill that step himself.
Possibly. Also, the commentary notes the Buddha knew, through his insight into karma, that the conditions just weren't right for robes and a bowl to appear miraculously for Bahia, so he needed to go through the process of acquiring them.
Okay, so Bahia goes off to find robes and a bowl. But then the story takes another sharp turn, doesn't it? A tragic one.
It does. While he's searching for these requisites, he's attacked by a yake, a kind of nature spirit, sometimes fierce, who takes the form of a cow, and she gores him.
Seriously, he gets enlightened and then immediately killed by a spirit cow.
Yeah, it's abrupt and shocking. He dies right there from the attack.
Wow. What a journey. What happens after his death?
Well, the Buddha, on his way back from the alms round, comes across Bahia's body, long discarded, actually in a rubbish heap.
Oh, man.
He instructs the monks who are with him to take Bahia's body, treat it with respect, cremate it properly, and build a stupa, a memorial monument for him.
So even though their interaction was brief, the Buddha clearly recognized his attainment.
Absolutely. And the monks, after they've done this, they ask the Buddha the obvious question. What happened to Bahia? What's his spiritual destiny, given his sudden death right after enlightenment?
And the Buddha's answer?
He declares unequivocally that Bahia Dārucīriya attained Parinibbana, final liberation, the complete end of the cycle of rebirth and suffering.
Okay. Full liberation.
And then he adds something else. He declares Bahia to be the foremost among all his monastic disciples when it comes to quickness of understanding, quickest insight.
The quickest. Even the teaching was so short and given in the street.
Exactly. This puzzles the monks too. They're thinking, how could someone get fully enlightened from just a few lines, heard while the Buddha was literally collecting food?
Yeah, it does seem counterintuitive compared to years of meditation or study.
So the Buddha uses this moment to teach them another lesson. He tells them not to underestimate the power of even a single phrase or verse of Dhamma if it contains real meaning and leads to genuine understanding. He says such a single meaningful phrase is worth more than thousands of verses that are just empty words.
Quality over quantity, basically.
Precisely. And he recites a verse to drive the point home. Better than 1,000 verses composed of meaningless words is one word of meaning, hearing which one becomes pacified.
One word of meaning.
Yeah. The commentary mentions other examples, like the short phrase apamato amata pada, diligence is the path to the deathless, as being incredibly potent if truly grasped.
And the story ends there, with that teaching.
It ends by noting that many people who were there and heard the Buddha explain this, they also gained significant spiritual benefits, reaching various stages of awakening themselves. So the impact rippled outwards.
That's quite a story. So many layers.
It really is. If you think about the key takeaways, first, just how unpredictable enlightenment can be. It doesn't always follow a neat linear path. It can happen suddenly, unexpectedly.
And the importance of the right teaching at the right time seems crucial. That specific instruction from the Buddha was exactly what Bahia needed then.
Exactly. And it shows that profound transformation doesn't necessarily require volumes of information. A single, potent insight, truly understood, can change everything, like that one sentence did for Bahia.
It also throws that whole issue of appearances and self-perception into sharp relief, doesn't it? His initial mistaken belief versus the genuine article he attained later.
Definitely. It's a stark reminder about, the dangers of self-deception, maybe basing our sense of spiritual progress on external validation, and the absolute need for authentic guidance.
And that final point the Buddha made, the value of concise, meaningful words over empty ones, feels very relevant today, maybe, in our information-saturated world.
I think so. It's an encouragement to seek the essence, the real heart of wisdom, and not just get lost in the sheer volume of noise, to really chew on things that have meaning.
So maybe a final thought for you, listening. Reflecting on Bahia's sudden awakening. What's one single word of meaning for you right now? What's an insight, maybe even a simple one, that if you really took it to heart could potentially shift your perspective in an unexpected way?
Yeah, it's worth considering what brief understanding could unlock something new for you. It's certainly something to mull over from Bahia's incredible journey.